Freck on, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frack The Canon. Before we move on, today is August 29th, I believe. Yes. So yesterday we found out that the King T'Challa passed away. So just rest in power, King. Anything you guys want to say before we move on to our list of top five?
Well, I mean, I just say, I guess, to that effect, like, yeah, like you said, rest in power. It's weird to think about what they're going to do. Certainly, it's not the first time they've had to replace an actor, but
Yeah.
like, under these circumstances, though, like, it's like, do you replace that actor? And sort of you have to because of how much money Black Panther makes, but do you replace the actor or do you just replace the character? You know what I mean? In the comics, there are like other avenues they went, you know what I mean, with
Yeah.
like a female Black Panther or like, other different characters that could take up the mantle. So like in that case, it's like, you're Disney. Do you respect this actor's portrayal of this character to the point that you just change the character? And like, you know what I mean? Like, or like, that's a tricky one. I kind of feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really sad because Black Panther was such a historic movie. It was one of the first Marvel movies that was really recognized by the Academy Awards. Like, the big, like the filmic movie people are like, this is something that's important, and just the cultural change I think that it really made by having like a person of color as a lead superhero in a movie, and just be widely watched by like the mainstream, like it was just such a big moment, and to lose him and maybe that character is really sad.
I agree. Yeah, it's definitely, and like CJ said, to what CJ said, is that it is show business at the end of the day. So what do you do? Like Disney being Disney, I don't know what they're gonna do. I feel like the easiest thing would be to replace the actor, but I don't know. It's hard because I did cheer up. I'm like, Frack this year, that is 2020. But rest in power, King. Before we move on, too, this episode we're talking about our top 5 comic book movies of the last 10 years, because that's all it's pretty much been in cinemas most of the part. But before we move on to that, I want to point out to Sarah's shirt. Sarah, I love that shirt. You want to tell us what it is? I know what it is.
This is Ice-T, the actor, and he has Ice Cube.
Cubes, plural.
In his cup of iced tea. I couldn't resist. It was cracking me up.
Okay. I love it. I'm glad you wore it. It made this weekend a lot better compared to yesterday. So all right, we're starting with the top 5 comics of the last 10 years. Who wants to start first? And do you have who wants to start first?
All right, I'll start. Age Before Beauties. Let's see. My first movie I'll go with here is X-Men First Class, a René favorite. But no,
it's not my favorite at all. It's one of my least favorite X-Men movies. But carry on, TJ. That's a good choice.
René hates X-Men First Class, but I absolutely love First Class about as much as René hates it, and that's why it's on this list.
You made this based on a movie I'm gonna hate.
That's funny. No, I do love X-Men First Class for a lot of reasons. Mainly because Magneto is one of my favorite characters in the X movie franchise and in the X franchise period. And I think it's like it serves as like an origin story for him more than any of the other characters in the movie, even more so than it does Charles Xavier. And I think it's it's funny because X-Men movies are very much hit and miss. So when you get a decent one, it's like you gotta hold on to it because you don't know when the next one's gonna come. But yeah, I for a lot of reasons, X-Men First Class is one of the more memorable movies of the 2010s to me. It was like something where I was like, I had seen X3 and I was like, okay, like anything you guys are gonna like, you set the bar pretty low. Like I'm not going into this expecting like a decent movie, but I came out pleasantly surprised.
Sarah, do you want to touch on that before?
Yeah, I mean, I love the X-Men franchise. Is actually the movies that got me into superhero movies. Like X-Men, the original one that came out like back in the 90s was my entry into comic book movies. And So I just love the franchise, and I like that they did like a one from the past. And I like seeing Mystique before she like became more evil. Like I really liked having her character in that movie. So that was nice to see.
So I go. So TJ says I hate that movie. I don't hate it. I don't love it. But when we saw it, I mean, we were just fresh out of X3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine. So I'm like, oh, this movie's awesome. But we saw other movies come out. I'm like, all right, out of what was it? Days of Future Past and X-Men First Class, in my opinion, Days of Future Past is way higher than its First Class. I'm like, all right. There was I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that movie in a while, to be honest, because it's one of my, it's one in the middle for me. It is a good movie. It is a good movie. It is. I like that, like you said, that they made it historical. They made it during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The only thing that I remember that threw me off to no end was like, wait, we just saw Emma Frost and Wolverine, like the original Wolverine, and now we see her again, but she's older now. So I'm like, and that's when the whole time stuff happened. So I'm like, wait, what? What is happening in this movie? Like, so but it is a good movie. It is a good character piece. For Magneto and Charles, I felt that Charles Xavier and Professor X were the bigger protagonists. Like we learn more about them than the other kids. But yeah, it is a good X-Men movie. Not my favorite, but I don't hate either, CJ. All right. Any last comments we want to Sarah's number 5?
Well, I'll tell you my number 5. I went DC, and I went with Shazam because I love that movie. My sister's actually a foster mom, so to have a movie that has foster kids becoming superheroes, and it was just like so lighthearted and funny, and I think really touched on some issues that I've seen experience, like people wanting to belong and choosing your family rather than being stuck with the family that you were born into necessarily. It was really fun and funny, and it was a breath of fresh air in the DC universe for me.
I did you want to say something, DJ?
Yeah, I like Shazam a lot. Just to touch on what she was saying too, like I didn't grow up in a foster home or anything, or have ties to that necessarily, but I grew up in a family where family bonds are very tight, and because of that, like it's almost like a movie that even involves that, like is like gets me on that level somehow. Like it's like almost like a cheat, like it's like a cheat. Like if it's all about getting together with family, then it's like it always like melts my heart on that like aspect. I'm like, oh yeah, I love it. But yeah, I totally get that aspect, and that aspect of the movie did warm my heart as well. The fact that it's about him sort of finding this family where he belongs.
I agree. Sorry. Go ahead. You say that again.
No. I was just finishing.
No, it's I forgot about that movie because I was just watching some of the clips of the Shazam family. But that movie made me tear up. That movie made me cry when Billy Batson tracks down his mom. And it was, I don't want you, go away. Pretty much that, like I was tearing up. Like that, I'm like what the frack? Like this is a superhero movie for kids. That was a great moment. And it is a fun movie, and it is, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, DCEU movie out of the since Batman Man of Steel versus to what we have now. To me, it's one of the most like, I enjoyed the movie throughout. And my favorite moment is
all hands on deck. Say my name.
Billy!
No, not my name. No, say the name that I say to turn into this guy.
Shazam!
That's my favorite moment. And I took my sister to see it with my dad, and we came out. We were all three were laughing at that scene. That scene was hilarious. Alrighty. Any last comments before we move on to my number 5? Okay. So my number 5 is the biggest movie of all time, and it is Avengers Endgame. And that to me is just because I was like, okay, you guys brought everything. There was emotion, there was stakes. And I know CJ, you prefer Infinity War over Endgame, but to me, Endgame it was a sequel. Like Infinity War stands on its own. Like you don't need Endgame, you can end that. But Endgame gave me closure. Endgame gave me Endgame made me love Captain America: The First Avenger because of that ending where Captain America goes back in time and he's dancing with Peggy. Well, I'm like, that to me justified Captain America's travels. Um, it even made Thor 2 a better movie. It justified Thor 2's existence. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, that's my number 5, and it just had all the amazing moments, and it just the Avengers assemble. That's my number 5.
Endgame to point. Yeah, I do like Infinity War more. But Endgame is like, it's almost like if you were gonna ask Google what the definition of good fan service is, it would bring up Avengers Endgame, because like that's what the movie is, and that's the reason why it's not on my list, because it's essentially, it kind of boils down to like fan service. And I don't mean, even though I'm saying that, I really don't mean that as a negative. Like, I still love that movie to death. Like, I've actually watched it twice in the last like couple of months, and still like find new things to like about it, and still like really appreciate more of the things that I even liked about it the first time. Like, there's so much that I love about Endgame. The only reason it didn't make my list is because of what you said. It doesn't. I don't believe Endgame stands on its own. It's not supposed to, though. It's supposed to conclude everything that's been started, which is a feat in its own. But I don't think it stands on its own. So that's why it's not on my list. But I do love Endgame.
Sarah?
Yeah. I actually, when I was making this list, I actually ended up not putting any of the Avengers movies. So that might give you a little perspective into what my future choices are. But I think if I was gonna pick the Avenger movie that I like the best, it would be the first one, because it's like, I feel like after the first one they had too many superheroes, like in like a good way, like, but like the story just becomes so scattered. Like the first Avengers, you had the 6 original that we had the lead up movies to, and it was a contained story, and then the rest of the movies, I think they just get too much. Like it's hard to completely tell anyone's story, so you kind of lose the I think like a little bit of the core of what happens in these movies. But that being said, I mean, of course I love them. They're movies for fans, and they're amazing. But I think the first one would have been my favorite if I had found space on my list for it.
It's funny because I was going to, but then I was I took my dad to go see it like a week after it came out, the week hyped down, and he goes, "What do you think?" I'm like, "What do you think?" He goes, "It's like it's kind of boring until the last act." Until I'm like, all they do is talk. I'm like, "Oh yeah, they do, huh?" But Avengers, yeah, the first one is started it all. It's the granddaddy, but I'm like, all right, they just talk though. Till the third act, which is awesome.
But you know what? Listen, in defense of that though, like when I first saw it, and even still to this day, like them just talking is some of the best moments in the MCU period. Like, and I don't mean just in I don't mean just in Avengers. Yes, in that movie Avengers. Like that's how I felt when I was watching it. But heroes just sitting around and talking are some of the best MCU moments, period. Like, and it's something that they do better than any other superhero, like people who make superhero movies, like in my opinion. Like just seeing like Captain America just shooting the shit with Iron Man, you know what I mean? Like superhero movies don't really do that, like except for MCU. Like, and I think that's really cool.
It allows for more character development when it's not just action. And then I feel like you connect more with what's going on.
No, yeah, and that's why I said Endgame to me is kind of like the culmination, the catharsis of all this, like 22 years. I'm like, this big, just like, all right, I can start from zero again. Not now, but I can tell you. Okay, so CJ, moving on. What is your number 4, CJ?
My number 4 is, I didn't order these, so I'm doing it right now. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I remember when that movie came out. I think René shoved that graphic novel in my face, and then
I did,
and I read it and I enjoyed it. I can't remember if I read it before we went to see it.
You read it before, yeah. You read it before.
Okay.
I went to visit you before when it came out.
Yeah. So I read it. I really liked it. It like you could tell like that the guy who wrote the story is really a huge anime and video game fan, which is both what I am. and
his name
and
is his name is Brian Lee O'Malley. Carry on.
and when when I went to see this movie, and the movie is like a little bit different. It's a little tweaked, you know what I mean? Like, but went to see this movie, and like within the first like 2 minutes of this movie, like my eyes are wide, and I'm like, dude, like they made this movie for me. Like I could know, like I knew this, I knew immediately. I was like, dude, I'm gonna love this shit. Like, and I did. Like, it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World is still one of my favorite movies, like of all time. Like I still I really love it, and I'm gonna watch it again actually really soon.
It's funny you say that because that's my number 4 movie too. So there we go. But yes, that opening scene is like, and when Knives Child goes like, at the end of it, I'm gonna insert that clip here.
Okay, let's start with Launchpad McQuack.
That's not the actual title of the song.
Lemonade the stasis. Mama serpentine. I got a breathalyzer, and my body's clean.
You guys are so amazing.
And then at the end when Knives Child's like, wow, I'm like, what did I just see? Like what? It's
Her reaction to that was me. Her reaction to that as I'm watching the movie. I'm just like, wow, like it's cool. Like I was like, wow, like because the opening, like it's like now it's probably not nothing special, but it was like so cool to see that, like just the visualization of that. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It was like communicating. It was like visually communicating like a feeling of like how she felt, you know what I mean? Like this is this epic thing, even though they're just like this freaking college band, you know what I mean? Like they all just kind of get there after work or whatever, you know?
And that movie came out when we were that age too. We were around 22, 23, 24, that era. So I'm like, all right, we were still in that wheelhouse. I'm like, this is us right there. Sarah, your thoughts on Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
I saw it once in the theaters when it came out, and I mean, I enjoyed watching it. I did not have the same experience you guys did. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed watching it the one time that I saw it, but I didn't have the same moment that you two did, where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was like, oh, that was a fun 2 hours. I mean, I liked it. I don't really have much else to say because I only saw it once, way back when it came out.
10 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good movie. I recommend people check it out. Like, I definitely enjoyed watching it.
Well, that's my number 4. So we're moving on to CJ's number 3.
Do my number
Sarah's
4.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. That's saying in. I'm not cutting that out. That's saying in. Sarah, your number.
My number 4 is Wonder Woman. I love that movie. It's directed by a woman, stars a woman, and she's just so awesome. Like she was exactly what I wanted her to be. I'm so bummed that COVID has not let us see the sequel. But I just love that movie, and it was just another great DC. Like they've made 2 good movies in the past 10 years, and those were the 2. What's your third one?
Aquaman.
No.
Oh my God, what is it? No, yes, it's okay. All right, but no. So Wonder Woman, I like Wonder Woman up until the 3rd act. I'm like, oh God, like, and I told you this when we reviewed Wonder Woman. You can check it out in the other episodes. Go back. I'm like, that's Ares. I knew who Ares is. It's that guy. Like, I already knew it. So that was my only 2 things. But it was.
I agree with that statement. As in, like, I liked it up until the 3rd act, but I liked it. But usually in these conversations that I have with people about how I feel about Wonder Woman, like I liked what I liked up until the 3rd act so much that for the most part, I still like the movie. Like it's still a fond remembrance for me. It's still like, man, I still agree with that statement. Yes, it's one of the best DC movies that they've done in the past, like since they've tried to do this DCEU thing. You know what I mean? Because I mean, it's really solid. It's a really solid story. I just think the only thing that I don't like is like the last like 20 minutes with how they execute the villain. It's not even the villain. It's just how that last part of the story. But even that said, like just that last little bit, like I'm still super excited to see the second one. You know.
Yes.
And anything else that they want to put her in the front of the screen for as Wonder Woman, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm sold. Like I like her as the character.
This might be an expert, but did you guys see the trailer for Wonder Woman 84?
I've been not watching trailers because I want to like be all surprised when I go to the movie.
Oh my god, that trailer! I'm like, what the frack, COVID? I hate you. They showed us Cheetah, and I'm like, I didn't know I needed this. I wanted. What's up?
No, that trailer made me mad, like because they're still not telling us anything, like because they're showing us more that they didn't show us in the first trailer, but they're still not telling us anything about what this movie is about, like, and that's pissing me off because I'm like, listen, dude, like, just tell me what the movie's about. Just tell me what it's about. It looks cool though. Like I still want to see it.
I really want to see it. I want to see. I'm not the biggest Kristen Wiig fan, but her Cheetah looks amazing. I'm like, oh wow, you're actually doing it. You're not giving her like no. She's actually a cheetah. That's cool. You should watch the DC fandom, Sarah. I think you would have enjoyed it. All right. So that was your number 4, right?
4, yeah.
I see. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Logan. Is it? Hold on. Yep, I said it already. It's Logan. My number 3 is Logan. I love Logan. I love it so much. Like I don't really have much to say about it. Even like I like Logan. Like it's a decent movie. Here's like the last. I always kind of really like the last hurrah story. You know what I mean? Here's this dude who was like, you know, it works a lot in westerns, maybe even samurai movies and stuff. Here's a dude who used to be this big freaking thing, and this big bad dude. And he has since, that was a whole lifetime ago, he's since like put all that behind him. He's created this kind of new life, and something is pulling him back in to do one last kind of job. I really like stories like that. I think Logan is a really good character to do something like that. I think it's interesting because in Logan wasn't the last X-Men movie, but it takes place after every other X-Men movie. So it effectively ends the franchise without having to end the franchise, which is like a really smart thing to begin with. You can remove this character who's really popular and loved as being this character, but you can tell an end to his story without ending the franchise. You know what I mean? Like I thought that, well, that's pretty cool. You know, and even though they're dark endings, you know what happened to everybody. You know what I mean? They do kind of, so when something comes along, like, I don't know, Disney buying Fox, they've already told the end. It doesn't matter. They don't have to game type thing. They've already told you what the end is like. You know what I mean? They've already said goodbye to these characters, which is cool. And I like Logan. It stands alone. It doesn't have to be. It's like I said, it's the end of a franchise, but it doesn't have to be what Endgame is. It's like, oh, whatever. I'm just this little small story, self-contained. But the things that you see in my movie reference and are informed by everything else you've seen. So it's cool, and not that it matters because Fox never gave a damn about their own continuity anyway. So,
Yes. Sarah, thoughts?
I mean, I love Logan. It's a really great movie. For me, it's a little too sad. Like it was too real on the sadness. I mean, Sir Patrick Stewart is getting kind of old, so to have him have what happens to him in the movie and then think about that might be coming soon in real life is like I'm like, don't stop killing all the people I love. But it was just, yeah, I mean, it's a fabulous movie. For me personally, it's a little too sad to end up on my top 5. But yeah, it's one of the best X-Men movies they've made.
I used this line once to CJ when we're talking about The Dark Knight, and I said X2 is a movie, Dark Knight's a film. And I feel that about Logan. Logan is a film. It's not a movie. It's there's actual character development. The R rating is earned. They treat Wolverine like he should have been treated from the beginning. As much as I love X-Men, the first X-Men movie is what got me into comic books, and I fell into a huge rabbit hole. And that's why I love Wolverine too, because of that movie. But I'm like, all right, this is the Wolverine that should have been, we should have seen. And I will go back into more into that when I pick my number one.
Spoiler alert.
Alrighty, so that was your number 3. Sarah, your number 3.
My number 3 is Deadpool. I love that movie. When my sister watched it, she was like, "This is you in a movie." Like, she was like, "This movie is you," and I was like, "Oh," which I'm not sure if that's a compliment or like an insult.
Maximum effort.
But it was just, it was very aware of what it was, and it was funny, and it was a comic book movie for adults. It's not any of this like, it was R, obviously, and it was fun. It was very fun.
I love Deadpool. I was surprised by how much I saw. I'm like, oh, it was funny. I love the self-awareness thing. I love how he's making fun of Wolverine. Surprisingly, had a very, very like heartwarming message about love and all that stuff. I'm like, even though they had these fracked up lives, they still found each other. I'm like, oh, that's kind of that's dark but cute. I'm like, one of my favorite scenes is they're doing Happy International Women's Day, and he gets pegged by what's her name, by that chick. I'm like, wow, like this is like messed up, but it's romantic at the same time, and only Deadpool could do that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love Deadpool. It almost made my list, almost. But yeah, I love Deadpool. I don't have much to add. That movie's awesome. It's great.
That's great. All right, so that's your number 3, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my number 3 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is by far. I remember when I first saw it, I'm like, I have to text TJ immediately. I'm like, dude, I don't know if I like this movie or if I love this movie. And I saw it again. I'm like, no, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. This is one of my favorite Spider-Man movies of all time. I do have some issue with it, but it's just like, okay, this is cool. This is amazing. See, like this kid learning to be Spider-Man, which we've seen before, but there was more weight to it. Like it wasn't just like his and it was very true to Spider-Man fashion about I'm a kind of from Mark Bernardin kinda was that he still had his family around him. He still had the support of his family without them knowing Spider-Man, but he had to fight his uncle too, and to steal from Mark Bernardin. And Uncle has to die. For that person to become Spider-Man, someone had his uncle had to die. Uncle Aaron had to die for him to fully become and accept being one of those Spider people. And it's just one of those amazing stories, and it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And then Chris Pine as Peter Parker, like that's actually kind of awesome.
To take off on that, since mine would be next anyway, this is my number 2 choice. So I will just say, I'll just start into that like this. Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite Spider-Man movie, first of all. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Yes, I like what you said about that. Yes, it is. It because it is very much the same Spider-Man story that we've gotten in movie form a couple times already. Like we got with Tobey Maguire and we've gotten with Andrew Garfield. It's still that same story, but it's just told in a little bit of a different flavor. And I would shine a little light on what you were saying. You were saying like an uncle has to die. Like he still has his family, but his uncle has to die. Yes, the uncle has to die. And you're like, he doesn't become Spider-Man until his uncle dies. And he doesn't, but to put it back to what the earlier part of that sentence that you said, you're like, he still has his family though. And I feel like it's when he realizes that he's actually not alone. He might be the one with the powers, but he's not alone. That's when he gets it, because his uncle dies and he's in a low. He still can't use his power, but it's his dad comes and he has that little conversation with him through the door. And it's like really when he's like kind of let him know, listen, man, I've been hard on you, but it's because like I see your potential. Like I am proud of you. Like don't let don't let, going back to the family thing, you know what I mean? Like, don't let the fact that I'm hard on you make you feel like I'm not in your corner. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just your dad. I have to be like that. Like, but you know what I mean? Do what you want to do. Like, I'm not trying to control you. And I know you don't want to go to this school. I'm only doing this to help you, to support you. You know what I mean? And like, so know that I just lost my brother. You just lost your uncle. Know that I'm here for you. Like, we still love each other. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. And like, I feel like that talk and hearing that, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I'm not alone. Like, I do have people support behind me. Like, and it's like he was beating himself up because he thought it was his fault that Uncle Aaron died. But it's like still having that support influx from his family, from his support structure. That is what gave him the strength. And at the end, when he's fighting Kingpin, even like it's his dad whispering, "Get up, Spider-Man."
Right.
You know what I mean? Like his dad, "Get up, Spider-Man," and that's what gives him the strength. Like, so it is that very much that, yeah, you lose your uncle, this loss of Peter Parker turned him into Spider-Man, but he is different from Spider-Man too. He has a little bit of flavor. He has more of his family's ties that feed him, you know what I mean?
Right.
Feed into him to make him a better man too, you know. I like it. It's like a Spider-Man version. We had this talk a lot, like about like how you didn't like how he has this team, but Peter Parker didn't really have a team.
Yeah, that was my only complaint. That I'm like,
But to me, it just makes it's a Spider-Man version of like the hero's journey, of the classic hero's journey.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like they take that, but with the guise of Spider-Man, you know, mentor characters that kind of help him along the way. But in the end, he is the one who has to overcome that. In the end, he's the one that sends everybody home, and you know, saves the day, saves the multiverse.
True. That is true. I didn't think about it until you said it. That is hero's journey. You meet people as they come to. That's right. That's a very Joseph Campbell thing in that book I sent you. Sarah, thoughts?
I mean, I love that movie. The style they shot it in is just, it fits the movie perfectly. It's like it is a visual comic book. Like it's so pretty. And I think, the charm of Spider-Man, which they really captured in this movie, is that he's so young. Like, and I think it makes him really relatable because he's not perfect. He is still trying to figure out like what to do and how to do things, and he makes mistakes, and I feel like that's always been the benefit of Spider-Man, is his youth and his flaws, because it's just way more relatable than like, say, Captain America, who's always like, yes, I will save everyone, I'm perfect, and that's great, but it's to me that's always made him way less interesting, and way less real, and I feel like Into the Spider-Verse really made that character that I think is just a really special character for people.
Yeah, no, it's Miles Morales is he's getting popular a lot. I'm seeing a lot more in the regular 616. I haven't read my comics in about a year now, but I know he was growing everywhere. Yeah. So, do you want to go? So your number 2 is Spider-Verse, CJ. Do you want to keep talking about it, or should we move on to Sarah's number 2?
Oh yeah, I was trying to just jump in and like do my real quick. So yeah.
All right, hello, welcome to Fracky.
Yeah.
Take 2.